So recently I have been battling a little bit of art block lately, and I have to say I'm not a very big fan of how it feels. And when trying to think of ideas for this video, I just couldn't really get excited about any of them. So I decided I'm going to make a nice cup of tea here and let's fill in some pages in my sketchbook. So if you like these kinds of videos, go make a cup of tea or coffee or anything and grab out your sketchbooks because we're going to be drawing together. Unless you don't want to, of course that is okay. So this is actually my cappuccino sketchbook. I got this in the Jazza Inky box and I actually really like the paper. It's a really nice sort of toned paper and I thought it fit really nicely here with my cup of tea. It's almost the exact same shade. And I just wanted to fill in a few pages here because I rarely ever actually draw in my sketchbook. I usually always do it as like a final illustration on some paper, and I feel like I neglect my sketchbooks a little bit. And I thought to myself, maybe drawing in my sketchbook today would be a good choice because it sort of takes the pressure off you. Like, it doesn't have to be something big and huge and fancy because it's basically a sketch in a book. That's my reasoning anyways. Perhaps doing some fun little, no pressure sketches might help me get out of art block and feel a little bit more inspired. So for this illustration, I'm thinking of doing a little bit of a floral drawing. It's just a little sketch of a dandelion. I actually really like dandelions, even though they get a sort of bad rap for being weeds. They're actually quite useful plants. I like them because not only are they pretty, they are actually completely edible. The whole flower, stem, leaves, even the roots of this plant is edible. And they actually have some medicinal qualities as well as you can actually make tea out of them. So yeah, it's just a really interesting thing, and that's kind of why I want to draw them today, to give them a bit more, good vibes. Even people say they are weeds, I still like them. So now that we've got the flowers and the stems all sketched out here with this pencil, I'm just going to go in with the leaves. Now I actually find the leaves of this plant really interesting. They are sort of long and arrow shaped on the end here, and they have sort of spikes along the edges, and I think that that's just really cool and unique. Now I've got a line down the middle showing roughly where I want each three to be, and as you can see, I've got one on the left and one on the right here, which I am currently sketching. And then we're gonna have one sort of in the back behind the flowers as well. I think that that would look good. So now that we have that done, I want to go in and add some sort of floating seeds around because I think that that would look really cool, but also fill the space up here a little bit as well because I didn't really draw this plant overly centered. So I kind of want to add something in the top corner and the bottom corner just to balance this drawing a little bit and give it a bit more, I don't know, composition, I guess. So now that we have this sketch mostly done here, I'm just going to go in and erase the sketch just a little bit to lighten it up so that I can draw over the top. Now I think I want to use some pencils first before I go in with my markers, and I'm just going to do like rough outlines here and just little details and stuff that I need to get before I, color it in. I'm just using an orangey yellow pencil for this because I'm going to be coloring it in yellow, but I want something a little bit darker so that you can actually see the line art a little bit. And since I'm not a huge fan of like darker yellows because I feel like they just sort of go muddy and grey, I prefer to shade my yellows with orange. It ends up being more colourful this way and I like it. So now I've just got this dark green here and I am adding in the stems and then the leaves for this plant. I'm actually really liking this. It's nothing fancy or crazy, obviously, but I think it's cute. And if you're like me and you're battling art block and you're actually liking what you're drawing, I guess that's a step in the right direction. Now I'm just adding a little bit of white here for those wispy parts of the dandelion seeds And as you can see, I actually mostly erased all of the pencil marks until I could just see it. You know, when I was a kid, I actually used to blow on these flowers as a kid and have all the seeds fly away, and then I would make a wish. Have you guys ever done that? I think that's a pretty common thing. It's kind of like blowing out the candles on a birthday cake sort of thing. I don't know, but yeah, I just remembered that from my childhood. So now I'm just coloring them in lightly, and I believe I'm using Y06 yellow, which is the Copic color for this. It's just a light sort of nice yellow color, and I'm wondering how it's going to look over the top of this paper, because obviously the paper sort of changes the way the marker looks a little bit because the ink is transparent. It does look a little bit dark at the moment, but that's just because this paper sort of goes a little bit dark when it's wet, but it'll lighten up a bit as it dries. So now I have a slightly darker yellow here, and I'm just adding in a little bit of shadow around the flowers, because these flowers have quite a lot of little tiny petals on them, and sometimes they can cast a bit of shadow in there, and I kind of want to add it to make it look a little bit deeper. Try and get a little bit more depth and detail into this. Now I'm just coloring in a nice base layer for the leaves and the stems, and I believe I'm using YG17 grass green. This marker feels a little bit dry. I might add a little bit more ink to it. Okay, this already feels much better after adding a lot more ink to it, so let's just fill in the rest of these leaves. So now I want to add a little bit more shadow and shading to these leaves here. Now I have a really dark marker called Bush. It's a sort of nice dark desaturated green. I think it is a little bit intense for this color, but I feel like I can blend it out with a few more colors here, and I think it'll look pretty nice. So now to finish this up, I just want to add a few more details with some pencils here, especially to get those highlights up a little bit and a bit brighter than the paper, and I think this will make it really pop nicely. So let's now label this one Dandelion, and then we can move to the next drawing. So I had a lot of fun drawing flowers for my last one, so I think I'm going to draw mostly flowers today, and I've decided on an Australian wildflower called Boronia. Now these are actually really tiny pink flowers, and you see them a lot in national parks, and I just thought that they were really cute and tiny, and it would be interesting to try and capture their style. Now I'm just starting off here with a few lines with just a dark brown pencil. I think I'm going to skip the lead pencil today and just go straight in with the colored pencil to sketch. I think it would be interesting to see how that works, and yeah, we're just drawing the little branches, and then I'm going to put some leaves and flowers on top of them. And I just spilled a little bit of tea on here, but no worries, we can wipe that up. I guess that's what I get for having tea on the same table as my art, but it's no problem because this is just a sketchbook. It's not like a, crazy illustration that's gonna take me 10 hours. So it's okay to get a bit of tea on it. So now I'm just starting out with my lightest pink marker, as you can see, and I'm just going to be drawing some little tiny cross shapes on the branches here. Now I'm going to slowly move on to darker and darker pinks and see how that turns out. Notice how dark the ink looks when it's wet versus when it's dry. I'm actually layering this up quite a bit because it ends up being quite lighter than I expected. And yeah, now I'm just layering a darker pink over the middle of these flowers, and since they are still a little bit wet, it will blend a little bit and hopefully it'll look pretty good. I'm hoping. Now next is an even darker pink, and I'm just doing that right in the center, and I actually really like how it's looking. It's kind of like an impressionistic flower, but we're not going to stop here. We're going to keep going and add more details over the top and eventually pencils, and hopefully this looks good. Okay, so I've added a few more layers of color over the top here, and I'm even adding in the branches with some marker, and I think it's turning out really nice. I still feel like I need to add more details over the top. This is one of the ones where you're just gonna have to like keep refining the details until it looks like what you're trying to get it to look like. Okay, so this is the scary part now. We're going in and I'm just adding in some white pencil over the top to get the white part of these flowers, and it's looking pretty interesting, but I'm gonna keep going and see how this goes. Now I just want to add a little bit of pencil here to these leaves just to try and refine them a little bit more like I did with the flowers, and I think it'll look a little bit more solid and a little bit better. And now I just want to add a little bit of a dark red around the edges of these flowers. I'm really worried that this is going to ruin them, but I kind of have to do it because I feel like they're just not solid enough, and I want to sort of define their shape a little bit more. So that's what we're doing. So I'm actually liking how these are going. I thought it was a little bit weird at first, but I actually really like how the the outline helps to define the petals a little bit more. And even though they look a little bit darker than in real life, I think it works for the drawing. So let's just add a little bit more white to these petals just to see if I can get some of those highlights back. And yeah, I think it's working pretty well. Now just a little bit more color on these leaves and a little bit more of an outline, and I think I can call this drawing mostly done. It's a nice little sketch of these flowers, I think. And of course, let's label this again. You know, these kind of remind me a little bit of like floral illustrations, except a bit less detailed, but I think they look good. It kind of makes me think of like someone who went out with a sketchbook and sort of did little illustrations of the plants they came across, and I think that's a cute idea. Maybe I should try that. So this next drawing is of a balloon flower. Now, I don't know why I picked this one. I was just looking through like lists of flowers in Australia, and this one kind of stood out to me a little bit. And I really like that it's sort of like a star shape, and the buds are kind of balloon shaped, which is really interesting. And I probably should have sketched this first with some lead pencil, because honestly, I'm struggling a little bit with this shape. I can't get it proper, but you know, this is a sketch, so let's just keep trying. So this is where I'm at right now, and as you can see, there are quite a lot of lines on this, and more than I expected to draw, but that's okay because honestly this is a very light purple, and I'm hoping that most of it gets covered up by the markers anyway. Maybe this is like a looser, more sketchy drawing. Or maybe that's just my excuse for letting it be more messy. Let's try and clean up these lines just a little bit more before I add in the color. Okay, so I'm filling in some purple here now on these petals, and we won't know exactly for sure how it's going to look over the top of that pencil until it is properly dry. But anyways, let's just fill these in and see what we're working with. So now I'm just adding in a little bit of shading here, just a little bit of extra ink in the areas that I think should be just a little bit darker. I find that it works best when the ink is as wet as it can be. And yeah, this pen should have a little bit more ink in it. I'm just going to refill it quickly. But actually before I do that, I'm going to blend this out with a lighter purple here that is much more juicy, and hopefully we can get a nice even blend. So that blending was not dark enough for me, so I'm just going in here with my darkest purple, and this is very, I guess I want it dark. Well, the shadows are going to be quite deep. Let's just see how this turns out. As I said earlier, this is just some experimentation in my sketchbook, so even if it doesn't turn out the prettiest, it's still serving its purpose, I think. So I think that actually turned out a bit better than I expected. I was kind of worried about the darkness of that purple, but I think it looks really nice and contrasty. So now I'm just adding in some layers on the upper petals, and I'm basically going to do the exact same thing that I did for the larger petals. So I've got the first layer of shading on this done now, and as you can see, I have added just a little bit of blue because I felt like it was leaning too much towards the pink side of the color wheel, and I wanted to just add a bit more blue in there, and I think it looks pretty good. So now what I'm doing is I'm just adding in a bit of pencil detail here, and I want to sort of draw the veins of these petals because you can sort of see little veins almost like they're leaves, and I want to draw them in with pencil because I feel like it's just going to be much easier than trying to get the thin lines with marker. Also, I feel like the pencil just gives a little bit more of a crisper look on this paper because the marker sort of blends out just a little bit. So I'm actually liking how this is going now. I'm just trying to be a little bit quick here because honestly, it's quite cold in this room and my fingers are feeling just a little bit stiff holding these pencils. But yeah, we're nearly done this part of the drawing. Honestly, this warm tea here is actually one of the main things keeping me going at the moment because it is cold. It's actually autumn here in Australia, but honestly, it feels like it's almost winter, which maybe that's why I'm drawing flowers and shit, because I'm trying to remind myself of spring where it's warm and plants are growing and stuff like that. Tell me you draw late at night without actually telling me you draw late at night. So now I actually want to draw one of the flower buds because these just look really cool. It's kind of like a balloon shape, which is how these flowers get their name, the balloon flower, but it's also kind of like a hexagon shape if you look at it like really carefully. I don't know, it's interesting. I like it. So while that part of the drawing dries, I actually want to go in and add some stems to these flowers, as well as some leaves around the outside, just to try and you know, get some more interest, because as you can see, this drawing has more of a close-up look, but I still want to get some of those petals, leaves in there. I think it'll look good. Also to help fill the page a little bit as well. So now that we have the start of some leaves here, I want to go in with my pencil and just add a little bit more detail onto that flower bud. It's actually got these lines where the petals separate, and yeah, just want to go get those with the colored pencils. After this, I'm just adding a little bit more detail for these leaves. Nothing fancy, honestly. They're kind of basic leaves, but hopefully we can build up something nice on there. So now all I want to do is just add a little bit of highlights to some of the petals here, just to get them to stand out a little bit more. And yeah, this one was mostly done. And honestly, I had a lot of fun doing this, and I really enjoyed just sort of chilling with you guys and, you know, doing a more sort of longer, chatty kind of draw with me kind of video. It was definitely a nice change of pace, especially when I'm, you know, just having a little bit of art block. I hope you guys enjoyed it too. So yeah, let me know in the comments below if you enjoyed this kind of content, if you want me to do some more videos like this here and there. I think it would be fun. So yeah, here is the final results. We have this dandelion here, which to be honest has to be one of my favorites, as well as the Baronia, which I just think are really tiny and cute. And then we have this purple balloon flower here, and I think that looks really nice. So yeah, if you guys did any art while watching this video, please feel free to comment or mention me on social media. I love to see what you guys are creating. And I hope you're having a lovely day. Please stay safe out there, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye everyone.